All right. All right. We are back. Man, it's like every day just ticks by. So much has happened in a year, and every single day is one more thing where things are happening in this year, and it just keeps coming, piling up, moving forward. We'll get into that, but before we get into that, I just want to say thank you for joining us today for the HEF podcast. HEF is the Home Education Foundation. It's a organization started by Brenda Dickinson back in the 90s. Whenever she saw the need to formalize protection for home education families across the state of Florida and parents' rights to educate their children as they see fit. We protect all forms of parent-directed education, and we're able to do that with thanks to the sponsors that we have, especially our title sponsor and our top sponsors as they come in. We have Arete, FPEA, and Fisher Precious Metals, and we're very thankful. We may be adding one to this list. We received a top sponsor donation, but the contact info is all I have is a mailing address. So I'm trying to touch base and make sure that we tell them thank you properly and give them special thanks. We love to celebrate our champions who are with us in this and doing everything that they can. And speaking of those champions, we want to also give a special thanks to, let's see if I grab the right screen. There we go. To all of our supporters on our recognition. While these are businesses that are local and love what we're doing in home education in Florida. Crystal, your camera is gone. Is that on? Okay. Fair enough. And the list is This list continues to grow. I'm very excited about that. But if you'll see a lot of our other sponsors on here. These are people who have businesses in Florida who love the home education community, love supporting it, and love supporting the work that we do. And so they come on as a vendor sponsor. And then, of course, we have all of our families that support us and make it possible for me to get up bright and early on a Monday and go to the Capitol and talk to people.
As we did this morning in your black suit.
That's right, as we did today. The man in black at the Capitol. So, we
I'm
were there.
trying not to disconnect, but it's telling me I have to disconnect and reconnect to use my
All right, well, good luck. Good luck and Godspeed, and we'll see you soon, because I don't think everybody wants to just see my face. We were at the Capitol today. Oh, there you go. I see the under part of your computer.
On camera. Okay, hold on. Let me change. I took that one off and put it on my desk because it wasn't working.
Go ahead.
There we go.
Well, hello.
The quality on this one is not as good, but since the other one keeps malfunctioning, we're just gonna go with this one.
It's like you were coming to us live from the trash can. Hello.
So that camera I just dropped on my desk, but apparently it decided to work again. So.
Well, good news. We've had a very interesting weekend. Out in was it Monticello? Is it Monticello?
They say Monticello. I keep wanting to call it Monticello because it's cello.
I do too.
But yeah, they
to me it just kind of rolls that way. It's like Monticello. Oh well. Out in Monticello. We had a great weekend. Met a bunch of homeschoolers out there.
Cold tent camping weekend.
Yep. 29 degrees.
Nice.
Camped out near fires. And met some very interesting folks. Very, very homeschooler. I don't think everyone who was there was a homeschooler, but there were quite a few who were, and it was some wonderful conversations. There were some who had homeschooled in the past, and now they're watching their kids raise the grandkids, and some were the ones raising their kids, and it was just great to be surrounded by a bunch of people who are just talking and sharing. What were you gonna say?
Oh, I was just saying it was nice, and the kids had a great time playing with other kids, and it was just it was a nice weekend.
It was a very nice weekend, and it ended today when I had to go to the Capitol. So we're back to that. I had a very interesting meeting at the Capitol today where I was able to hand our agenda off to one of the senators who we were hoping to work closely with to clean up some of the issues. And so I thought we might run through what some of those were, at least hit the highlights for this stream. Do you have that doc pulled up, or I'll just use the other doc?
I have it pulled up.
Okay. Okay. I'm actually trying to find.
Are you
my
trying to put it up
version.
on screen, or you just want to?
What? No, I don't want to put it up on screen
Okay.
per se, but I do want to run through them. So top of the list, digital devices.
Yes, which is
Let's just
the number
start
one
there.
thing that parents want to talk about whenever we are, when I'm in the Facebook groups. It's
Yes.
like, number one.
Digital devices. So that is on the top of our list. I did put it up there at the very, very top. It really kind of doesn't make sense if you think about it, that you can buy all of these virtual assets, and there seems to be a very real concern for fixing this. So we're very hopeful that the message has gotten through, and that we'll see language. We even suggested language, to make it easier for them to go, okay, cool, and either find a bill to add that onto or make one. So we'll see where we get with it. Again, just remember that, even when we do find someone who's willing to take up our issues and put them in a bill, it doesn't necessarily mean that the bill gets passed. So there's still many, many steps in the process, but we're beginning. We're trying to get in early. The session starts, I think, in March, so we are trying to get in as they're planning, who's going to be doing what bills and introducing what topics, and trying to bend their ear toward what's important to us and hopefully is also important to them. So starting off the list is digital devices. There was an issue with the application window for the PEP scholarship that we noticed in statute that is going to basically place the window February to April, which is very tight.
Yeah, it would force a lot of families to make decisions
Way,
very
way
early in
early.
their year,
Yeah.
rather
And
than having the time to kind of consider things and wrap up the current school year and then make a decision.
right. And a lot of home education families who might be deciding aren't necessarily deciding at that time of year, as well as, things that came up in last committee, the last committee meetings where they were discussing there was a scholarship for anti-bullying that allowed students to transition to different schools and different things like that. And if, God forbid, but in the middle of the year, if a parent wants to pull their child from public school, but the application window was February to April, they've missed it. So, little things like that, it makes sense to have some sort of consideration in the language for those things. So that's on our radar as well. There is a payment dates for the PEP scholarship, are not spelled out like they are with the UA scholarships. We kind of want to, I think, in the spirit of streamlining things and making it as easy as possible for the SFOs to just deliver on a rhythm and a record, streamline those, I think would be good. There is some interesting issues that the SFOs are running into with tutoring organizations and having to vet every single individual tutor rather than being able to vet the organizations as a whole. So we were hopeful that this would be able to be addressed.
The goal of that is to greatly simplify the reimbursement process for that specific category. So they're not having to do all this extra vetting and all that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. And right now they have to vet by statute, every single tutor, rather
Even
than being
if they
able
work
to.
for a company like Sylvan or something. They have to vet the company and the individual tutors, which is a lot of extra work.
That's a lot of extra steps. So, we also have on our radar home education instructional programs, which are different than home education programs. Home education program is the enrollment. So in your 1002 statute for definitions and paths of enrollment, a home education program is there, but then there's a home education instructional program, which is basically a facilitation program where instructors are able to help parents as they direct the education to provide additional instruction or help in various ways.
They are essentially class programs that serve homeschooling families. So
and those as class programs, they have tuition and fees. So there's a statute, there's a mention in the 1002.394 statute for unique ability scholarship that's a typo. And then there's the need to get the definition for what a home education instructional program is pulled in. So I'm hoping that we can, slide those two things in together and get that updated to secure parents' rights to educate their children. There's a lot, and this is not to throw shade on anyone who chooses to home educate in this way, but there are a lot of programs that are coming out that are like, hey, start a micro school and we'll bring your kids to us and we'll home educate them for you. So it's a different approach, but it wasn't what the intention of this was, and the home education instructional programs are not teacher directed or school directed approaches where you drop off and they handle everything start to finish for your kid. They're simply supplemental and complementary to what parents are directing the education of. So we wanted to make sure that was a very clear distinction. That way, if they do in the future see restrictions, they don't onerously restrict home education as such. So that's on the radar. Let's see what else. There's I think the other big thing, or two of the other big things, maybe the main three. The first one would be digital devices, and that'd be great. The second one is there's the athletics issues that we keep running into in different counties all through Florida, where they're essentially using the amendment that put limitations on classroom size to say, oh, that school doesn't have any capacity for you, so you can't play in the athletics programs there. I know you could choose a school that you were zoned for, or that you could choose through open enrollment, but you can't choose these because they're at capacity. But then there's no transparency on what capacity looks like, and there's nothing that holds them to being transparent about what their capacity is. So they're using that seat limitation for academics to deny access to athletics by interpreting the reference to open enrollment as a something that the capacity can gatekeep, but then not having transparency on it. So it's I don't want to be rude when I say any of this, but it's basically a way that they're able to go, oh, home education students, we don't want to deal with them.
Like a loophole, kind of?
Yeah, and then just kind of brush them aside and go, oh, we're at capacity. Yeah, move along, we're at capacity. And then when somebody goes, well, what is your capacity? Spell that out. And they push back, and there have been some parents that we've worked with that have been successful in doing this year so that their students could participate in the sports. But as a whole, we keep getting issues with counties that keep popping up, and this is kind of like their go-to move, their go-to response. So we want to clean that statute up, 1006.15, the Craig Dickinson Act, and get that cleaned up so that they're not able to leverage academic capacity to deny access to athletics. These kids still have to try out and make the team, so it's not like it's a guarantee that they're going to play on that team. It's just giving them the chance to try out and play. So, and then there's truancy. So it was something Brenda and I were talking about recently, where in statute, when a student is showing a pattern of non-attendance, the senator that I talked with today was even discussing how different counties have different definitions for what non-attendance is, from 5 days to 19 days, and it's kind of all over the place. So they would like to see that cleaned up, and we would like to see PEP addressed, because right now it's not addressed at all. So the last thing we want to do is create places that are black holes where people can slip in and be forgotten. So, the similar kind of solution that we have for home education students over there, we would slide PEP students into that solution, the same solution, not create a new thing or a new issue or anything like that for them. Just make sure that it also applies to them. The way that the other wording is, where it says that PEP students will get the same flexibility and opportunities as home education students under the PEP program. PEP program's redundant because anyway.
Yeah.
I feel like
you say PEP scholarship.
PEP.
Just PEP.
PEP. It's just PEP. But this is not a flexibility or an opportunity. This is a kind of what's the word? Fail safe. This is a guardrail to the program. So we just want to make sure that we also include PEP, since it's not included in flexibilities and opportunities. It needs to kind of be included on this end of it. So contract language for PEP students. The districts as a whole are struggling to onboard with the SFOs to become providers. Some parents want to take a machine class or a trade class, or there's some extracurricular or advanced math or something that they would like to take there. And the schools, the media is losing their minds that parents want to spend scholarship money at theme parks, but they don't want to report at all on the fact that most of the districts don't even want, per se, to serve PEP students.
They're putting up a lot of resistance. Like they've been told by the DOE that they have to serve these students if they serve home education students, but they're still, they're not being quick about it. There's lots of parents that wanted to take classes that they just weren't able to take this year because the districts wouldn't onboard them. And
right.
Yeah, like you said, of course, that's not being covered in the media.
No, not being talked about. Yeah. So it's selective reporting for sure. There's lots of little things to be cleaned up. So that, putting in language that doesn't give them the option to create a contract, but lets them know they must get those contracts created we'll tighten that up. And then we're working on IEP challenges with districts for the UA scholarship. So right now there's a piece of the language that talks about let's say it's in 1002.3947B1, and it says that for non-public school student with an IEP, the district is authorized to use evaluation reports and plans of care developed by licensed professionals, but it doesn't tell them that they must.
Right. So that little tiny language difference means that they can decline and choose not to.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So we want that closed off where they need to. They need to use those. And because it's difficult when, the student's a home education student and they're not in the classroom, they're not with the personnel in the district and being watched, like how far they are from the board or, what's happening now during the day. And so refusing to use the evaluation reports and plans of care developed by licensed professionals is bottlenecking the process for getting them.
So in practical terms, this is the difference between the school district telling you that your kid has to basically go to public school for a period of time so that they can observe them before they'll do an IEP. It's the difference between that and them accepting your child's psychologist's report as the source for the IEP.
And they're saying like, oh, well, we can use those, but we're responsible for our process, and our process looks like this, and this is how we process students, and so this is how we have to do theirs if we're going to do theirs, because this is how we do them, rather than being able to substitute it the licensed professionals.
And it's crazy
To
how a small change from is authorized
Mhm.
to shall shall use instead of is authorized to use makes a
Mhm.
world of difference in the
It does.
practical application of the statutes. So
Absolutely does. Delene says, sorry was slow to respond, but I assume that's referring to places like our co-op monthly fee. That's a reference to back
to the home
to something else.
education.
Yeah, I'll go back to that. I'll go back to that. Yeah, so that kind of rounds out the list of the things that are on our agenda. Um, don't want to go into like specific wording or anything like that because a lot of this stuff gets workshopped and changed, and somebody says this and then somebody goes, I don't like that wording, and it gets changed. So rather than hang our hat on any particular style yet, these are things that they're important to us and we're pushing them forward. So let's swing back to the home education instructional program part and answer Delene's question. So she says, sorry was slow to respond, but um, I assume that's referring to places like our co-op monthly fee only on Thursday. It's essentially parents teaching other kids classes at church. That's a home education program, correct? So no, a home education program. Let me find the statute actually.
So this is the nuanced definition that we're wanting to correct. So there's home education program and then there's home education instructional program. And they
Mhm.
actually mean two different things.
Yeah. So in statute, legally, the home education program has the same meaning as in 1002.01, but a home education program is not a school district program and is registered with the district school superintendent. So this is basically the parent
Yeah. A home
educating
edu-
your child at home. That
a
is your
home
home
education
education program.
program is when you register with the county to be
Hmm.
a home educator. That is
It
called a
means,
home education program.
yep, it means the sequentially
It is
progressive
your
instruction of a student
yeah.
directed by his or her parent to satisfy attendance requirements in
It's the
statute.
attendance track of being
Hmm.
home educating with the county. Home
And then,
education instructional program um, is what you're talking about with its classes that you attend.
hmm
And there are criteria that it has to meet, like it has to be a
hmm
business entity. So not every co-op would qualify, but yes,
correct,
in general, it is. That is the difference. Home education
right.
program is your attendance track if you're registered with the county. Home education instructional program is a class program that serves homeschooling families.
Correct. Correct. So some co-ops check enough of the boxes to be considered a home education instructional program, but not all co-ops check all of those boxes. So,
Yeah.
that just keeping tabs on the purchasing guide and what the definition, because that's where the definition currently lives, so that would be a good place to go
Yeah.
to make sure.
Speaking of the purchasing guide, can I just
Uh
in general terms address the media issue? Is that
huh.
is that okay to bring up?
Yeah, yeah. Let me see if I can find the article. You go ahead, though.
Okay. I wasn't gonna throw the specific person under the bus or anything right now. I was just gonna say, an article was shared with us recently, actually by someone from the legal team at Step Up. They're kind of, we're in good communication with them, and they kick us things if they kind of have a feel of a pulse, have their finger on the pulse of something that's happening that they want to make sure we're aware of. So they sent us this article. Um, and there was a legislator that was interviewed in this article, and the reporter was just kind of asking, like, what are your top items that you're focusing on this upcoming session? And one of the items had to do with school choice, specifically with the scholarship use. And again, the same as we saw last year, um, there there were statements about, parents spending the money frivolously, but there was this one specific quote that this legislator said, which was, "There are really no guardrails in place for how the money is spent, so we need to correct that." And I just stopped and went back and reread, like, no guardrails? There are literally 26 pages of a purchasing guide and 36 pages, I checked, I looked at the page counts, 36 pages of a parent handbook of guardrails in place for how the funds can be spent. But the reality is that a lot of the legislators are not aware that the purchasing guide exists. Or if
Mm-hmm.
they're aware that it exists, they haven't looked at it. They don't actually know what's in it. And they're assuming that it is just some very generic thing Meanwhile, the parents, because I see you, I see you. I
Mm-hmm.
watch your posts in the Facebook groups, and you are struggling to get legitimate things reimbursed because there are so many guardrails. So that just really irked me because I was like, there are no guardrails in place. Are you kidding me? So one of the things that I'm
Yeah, here's the
contemplating,
article here.
it's like on my to-do list for this week, is to actually reach out to the reporter who wrote that article and just be like, hey, in case you just want to publish a, correction or a expansion or a new article even addressing the fact that
Yeah.
there are actually lots of guardrails in place for this
Yes.
scholarship because it's not even up for debate. Like the purchasing guide is there on the site. People can go and reference it and see how many guardrails there really are. They're not. They're taking this general the media blitz of like parents are buying theme park tickets and
Yeah.
the assumption then is like, oh, we're going on a family vacation with this, when in reality even theme park tickets have
Mm-hmm.
all these limitations on them
Right.
because they are meant to be purchased for educational purposes, right? And you
And
have to
and they're
submit an educational benefit form for things and you have to explain how you're going to use it. Like
mhm. And the
these are
category that they fit under is what?
instructional materials.
Right. Which is just like mind blowing. It's like if your field trips are instructional materials.
Yeah.
Uh,
And
there,
step
there's a
up,
lot. Go ahead. Sorry.
step up, bless their hearts, the Southern Crips.
Yeah.
The statutes don't have a category for field trips, so they really did the best they could and put all that kind of stuff under instructional materials because that was the only place to put
Mm-hmm.
it in terms of the categories in statute.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and
But it's
I mean,
cumbersome. It's
it is
cumbersome to
cumbersome.
address because if you say,
Yeah.
okay, well, let's create a new category called educational experiences, well, then what what constitutes an educational experience? Like, how do you define and limit that or expand it? And it can get very nitty gritty and in the weeds and do approve, don't approve very fast. And the way that I kind of conceptualize the whole program. I didn't make the program, but the way that I think of it when I'm arguing and discussing these issues with our representatives and our senators is, I imagine for a moment that instead of taking a scholarship and putting it into an SFO and having the SFO dole it out, we simply looked at home education families and said, thank you for paying your taxes, but you're home educating, so here's a break back to you. And they were given a tax credit back, on their own taxes as cash in pocket, then there would be no rules as to how that's been. The parent would look at the money that they have as a resource and an asset and decide where they were going to invest it into their child and how they were going to do that and what was best for that. And as closely to that as possible is what I would like to see this program be and how it would be protected.
And we're not
Um,
alone in that. There are others who
mm-mm.
feel the same way, but
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately not everybody feels that way.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Unfortunately, not everybody.
Yeah.
Um, and then, of course, there are those who, once you create a good program like that and it sits that way, there are those who go, loopholes, let's abuse. I could get more for less.
There's always going to be abuse, but
There's always going to be those people.
why the purchasing guide with its guardrails, it's many, many pages of guardrails. That is why it exists. So, I mean, even in the current state where, we have the setup that we currently have with the scholarship, it's ridiculous to perpetuate this media rumor that
Hmm.
parents are just willy-nilly spending the money on whatever they want to
Yes.
buy. Like, it's
Yeah.
easily refutable. Like, all the documentation is right there for
Yeah.
public consumption.
There's so many facets to the conversation that are not being slowed down to be considered. And, one of those is also that the media started blowing up the PEP scholarship and the misspending August of last year. But the very, very first initial batch of PEP funds did not drop until September
Ask
30th.
anybody who was in PEP year 1 whether they got money in August. Like,
No,
seriously.
no one did.
No one had money in August.
No one did. So all the reports that parents are misspending funds on PEP were completely erroneous. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
We
At
could dive
best,
into the details of what
yeah.
else they were talking about, but
At best, they were like, misrepresented accidentally.
hey,
But
buddy,
I'm gonna
keep
mute
going.
for 1 second to see what he needs. But
Oh, okay. Yeah, at best they were misrepresenting the situation and when the funds dropped, or they had sandbagged these arguments and they just couldn't wait to throw them out there and run a story. Uh, I also think that, there are a lot of people who just do not understand home education. And they definitely, definitely do not understand home educating a child with disabilities. And some of those purchases that were referenced were valid purchases as a part of the UA scholarship program
right, like as Dina
and
mentioned,
should not be invalidated.
yeah, I mean, Dina mentioned here in the comments, we study culture and geography at Echo.
Mhm.
Like that's the media's like they've bought theme park tickets. It
But it's
If
it's
you
a
would
it's a
slow down and let us explain why,
right.
there's a valid use for that.
Yeah, and it's clear that there's a very real bent. You're taking our money and you're doing what with it? That's really all it is about, is that sentiment. And there's no real understanding of home education as a whole. If you ask anybody who's home educating for any significant amount of time, three years at least, and then some up to 20, you ask any of them why they would need a kayak or a paddleboard, and immediately they're going to rattle off 10 ways to go do science and to go talk about nature or to go do this or to do
Yeah.
that, and how, not as a one-time use, but it's something their family now uses and does regularly all the time as a way of
Yeah.
diving into their kids' passion and feeding them other avenues of education through those routes. It's not
Yeah, I can tell you right now,
lost.
if we had a kayak, we'd be doing like unit studies on the ecosystem in Florida. We'd be taking them out into the waterways and studying what's out there, like hands-on learning. It's
Even
not
if it's not a
it's not
kayak,
that
just
hard to
camping
imagine.
equipment.
Yeah,
Right.
it's not that hard to imagine
Yeah.
a legitimate educational use for some of these
Mm-hmm.
things. But the
Sure.
media is presenting them flippantly, and that narrative is just not being questioned, which for me is just very frustrating. Um,
It
so
is. It's a
I am contemplating actually writing this reporter back.
good. Do it. I think you
But
should.
Dina says there is already an inherent trust given to families by giving them tangible goods. Any item
Right.
can be sold for a profit. Why
That's right.
trust with some categories but not other categories?
Yeah, like that's a very valid point as well. You created the program, you put it into place. You obviously have chosen to trust parents and say, "Hey, this is something we want to do for the student," and the parent, through the parent, do it. Um, Great. So then why are you nitpicking it? Why are you pushing it back? Uh, it comes down to careers,
Yeah,
selfish
and
ambition.
saving face again
Yeah,
in light of
yeah,
all the media headlines
yeah.
that are
And it doesn't
presented in a
help.
certain way.
It doesn't help that the purchasing guide categories and things like that are non-intuitive. Like, obviously there are some issues, right? Like, just the way that they're categorized, well, this doesn't make sense and that doesn't make sense. And if you could split away the museums and the visits to like the state parks and the different thing, like they're in the same category as theme parks, right? And so when you adjust one, you inherently adjust the other. But they only care about talking about the invalidity of the one and not, the validity of the multiplicity of ways in which parents are using it, and protecting it. So they just don't want to see any of that money go anywhere but public school, is ultimately what it is. And
I mean, this is
um,
kind of a side comment, but if
yeah,
any of you have friends that are in journalism or reporters in
yeah,
the media or whatever, where you have your own blog, I would love to kind of
yeah,
see a grassroots uh, counterculture
yes,
presentation of what's happening with the scholarships. I
yeah.
would love to see a flurry of articles and posts going up about the legitimate uses of the funds and what families have been able to do because of them. And
Speaking of that, we have
speaking of
this really cool project called the Tell Your Story Project that we started. So if you have your own blog and you want to do that, great. Please do that. Echo echo out and share that out. But also, if you have a cell phone, which is a lot of all of us, if not everybody, and you can press record for up to 60 seconds, just tell us what you do for homeschooling, whether you use the scholarship or not, and then what impact that those choices and that unique approach that you have has had on your children, and then just send it to us so that we can put it up on our YouTube and build this repertoire of content that's shareable and accessible to give our legislators, our senators, and our representatives a clearer picture, looking through the windows, to see what we do and that why it's worth protecting the way that it is. So let's see. Dina says, right now I have two 11-year-old boys in my backyard doing PE, archery and rifles. I love it. Hand-eye coordination, safety, aiming, yeah, etc. We couldn't use our funds from the scholarship for it. Yeah, that's right. Mm-hmm. We had to just buy the rifles and targets ourselves. That's right. And there's a lot of things that are valid sports that, I think I spoke to one parent at the Capitol last year. Not that the scholarship helps with this at all. I want to be clear, it doesn't. But he was marksman, and he was traveling around to the different marksman competitions and doing quite well. What an interesting kid to talk to, and his mom and their family and the mobility, and just what a very fascinating experience as I listened to them talk about, and the kid was very well spoken, very articulate, as one who has those experiences would be, I think. So anyway.
But that speaks again to the guardrails that are in place, because even though marksmanship is a valid sport, a competitive sport even, it's not covered by the scholarship because of safety concerns.
Correct.
So there are so many guardrails in place that are just not being discussed.
Yeah, but you know how the media would treat that. The moment somebody bought, these right-wing conspiracy theorists, we're using taxpayer dollars to fund their militia. Like, dude, it would be
of course, but that's maybe if you're gonna have guardrails, that's perhaps a more understandable one than, say, removing equipment used as instructional materials or anything outside the 4 core subjects.
They talk about constitutionality and a well-regulated militia, and they're using our taxpayer dollars to. Oh my goodness, you just know, the media would go wild with that one. Jay Castro says, right, my thing keeps jumping around. Let me pop this out. Hold on, sorry. Do you want to read it? Okay.
Yeah. Right now we are doing 3 courses. My homeschooler taking care of his grandpa at ACE, finances, and comparing different type of products at our local store. I mean, that's amazing.
Because that is.
Yeah. Those, first of all, taking care of his grandpa that's an experience that you can't.
It sure is.
Can't replicate in the classroom. You just can't.
And you never get that time back. I remember taking care of my great grandmother when I was homeschooled. Every Friday in the morning, I would go over and hop in her car with her and drive her around to go grocery shopping, and then she'd come home and pay me in hamburgers for doing that and cutting her grass. And like those experiences like that they make you who you are. They're irreplaceable. So kudos. Yeah. So that's a rundown. I don't want to bore everybody. We've been talking for 40 minutes. That's a rundown of our agenda, and then a wax philosophical on kind of the passion with which we approach some of these conversations that we have. Just wanted to let you guys know that we've already started kind of reaching out and trying to set meetings and getting connections too. So
and honestly, I know we say this every week, but it's still up on the screen. The biggest way that you can help us with what we're building toward this upcoming session is to send us your stories. You don't have to be on the scholarship. It's not just for PEP or UA. We just want to be able to show the legislators what homeschooling, what home educating families are doing, we want to open their eyes a little bit to the possibilities that are outside your typical classroom experiences, because I
Yeah.
think if they we know if they understand that better, there will be less of a bent toward restrictions,
Mm-hmm.
because they're responding to the media blitz of
Mm-hmm.
people buying big screen TVs and
Mm-hmm.
Peloton bikes, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
they're missing all of these amazing
Mm-hmm.
experiences that are actually happening across the
Yeah.
state. So,
They're getting a small slice
and
of
the
the
truth,
negative.
yeah, and the
And the
truth
truth
is,
is,
we said this last year, but I'll say it again. It's not just about the scholarship. Yes, they're trying to restrict the scholarship, but it's a
mm-hmm.
perception of homeschooling in general. This is a
Mm-hmm.
homeschooler scholarship. So the perception that they have of how PEP families are doing things absolutely impacts
Mm-hmm.
people that didn't take the scholarship. We
Oh yeah.
want them to understand the broader scope of home education and not to have this narrow view of how they see it. That's important
Mm-hmm.
in protecting the rights for all of us moving
Mm-hmm.
forward. So that's my piece. I'm done.
And I would only add to that homeschooling saw a massive boost post COVID. I think it doubled across the nation. Parents pull their kids. I even heard Bill Maher talking to somebody, and they were going over numbers about how so many parents, after the schools closed, just didn't send their kids back to public schools, and public schools are reeling because they've got a problem. If you don't have the kids back in schools, you can't get the funding for the school, and so they're struggling with these funding problems. And where are they going to put pressure? Where the funding went, they want it to not go there. So
Which just makes it all the more ironic that the parents that are actually trying to use PEP money to pay the school districts to take classes are being turned away because
how
that would
dare you?
put the funding back in. But
How dare you want to use that money for your children? We want to use it for your children. Okay, sure, yeah, uh-huh. Anywho, all right, we'll wrap up with that. I want to say thank you to everyone who's watching. Dina, I love seeing you in the comments. I know you're always right there with us,
yeah,
emotionally and spiritually.
thank you to Jay and Deline for your comments today as well, and Barbara.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you to our recognition wall sponsors, all of our vendor sponsors. Dina, I see you on there with ClassSource. I love it. Love you guys. Appreciate all of you. I know that we're coming up on a new year. Wow. Man, we're coming up on a new year. So as soon to be after the legislative session, we'll be getting into all of the visits and conferences, and we'll see all these faces again. Want to say, we'll put the agenda up from today. We're going to put that in the live forum. So you'll be able to have it as a reference sheet, or people might say, well, what do they do? Or like what we're working on now, that kind of thing. You might want to see that and share it. So we'll put that up so that it's shareable information, and you can.
And you can see right there on the screen, there's a 2025 legislative update section now in the forum. So that's where we're going to be putting all the stuff for this upcoming session.
Mm-hmm. And so, yeah. And then I just want to say thank you to our top sponsors. Let me get back over there. I lost the screen I was on. There we go. Thank you to our top sponsors. We have Arete FPEA, the Florida Parent Educators Association. Thank you guys. You've been with us for a while now. And Fisher Precious Metals coming on strong. There's so much to do. And I'm hopeful after today meeting with our first meeting. I got to say that I wasn't necessarily feeling hopeful. Because I was keenly aware of some of the battles that are going to be coming up, and I just thought, oh boy, here we go. But after today, we still have those fights. But I'm hopeful. So pray about it and tune in. We'll keep doing this. I think we've only got 2 more of these. We'll do the 16th and the 30th. So we're going to skip the 23rd. So there's 2 more of these this year, and then we'll see y'all next year. So. If nothing else, have a wonderful Monday, make lots of memories, and we'll see y'all next week. Thank you.